This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning. Today I'm going to talk about 10 things every family who has a child with intellectual developmental disabilities, abbreviated I/DD, should be thinking about doing in 2020. Now, everything won't necessarily apply to you. Some of the things you may have already completed or you decide you don't want to do for whatever reason. It's all good. This is going to be a really brief rundown. Over the coming weeks, I will take one and address each one in its own webinar, similar to this, to do a deeper dive into it. Right now, I just want to introduce people to the concepts and hopefully get a conversation started. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So my information is on here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. So let's go ahead and set this up. So the first thing you want to do is identify your risks. Now, this is not just life insurance. It's also making sure you have health insurance. Right now, with the current coronavirus, in Maryland anyway, you're able to enroll in health insurance if you don't have one, I believe. I would look into it. Other insurances include disability, life, long-term care, car insurance, renter's insurance, etc. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on any one of these. It's just things that you're going to want to think about. And if you have a financial advisor, somebody you're working with, make sure they're talking to you. Second thing you want to do is make sure you're on track with what you want. Too often, as parents, we're focusing on what our children wants and needs are, and we're not thinking about ourselves. Or if we are thinking about ourselves, we're not doing anything about it. We're putting our children first. So in the coming weeks, when I talk about this, I'm going to be doing a deeper dive into how we should be thinking about ourselves and why it's okay to give ourselves permission to do this. We're not being selfish. I would argue you're being more selfless, taking care of yourself, because you're going to be in a better place to help care for your children as they get older. Along those lines, at some point, each of us is going to have to stop working. Maybe it's because we want to, maybe it's because we can no longer work anymore. When that happens, are we prepared? So I'm going to be talking about not just retirement planning for people that are working for somebody else who, like a W-2 employee, but also self-employed people, because there are things that self-employed people do to minimize their taxes that could have an impact on Social Security, and down the road that could impact the benefit their children receive. And I don't know that people mean to. It's also important to realize you are allowed to have a life without your child. Many states have waivers that'll fund personal supports, in residential supports, if you can get them in place. We're going to talk a little bit about that. When a child turns 18, they do qualify for public benefits. Some of them don't kick in until age 21. It depends on the waiver program. We're going to talk about what you should apply for, how to apply for it, when you can apply for it, what some potential tripwires are, or things like that, things that you may not be thinking about, but should be. Halfway there, you're going to want to think about other things that maybe aren't on the forums, that you're on Facebook or other places where I know a lot of families like myself, we get our information by parents that have gone before it. Well, sometimes parents may not be talking about it because they just don't know. So I'm going to touch on 3 things for sure, and maybe some other things that I've come across as a parent and working with clients over the years. Social Security, you are eligible at 62. When I talk about this in week 6 from now, I'll be explaining why you may not want to take it at 62 and how it may affect your child and what you can do to potentially offset it or allow you to delay taking Social Security, things of that nature. College planning, some of us, myself included, their children aren't planning to go to college because they have no desire to, or just aren't able to for whatever reason. Colleges are not just about college credits and diplomas. They're also about non-credit bearing classes and trade schools. So maybe you want to develop a trade or IT or things like that. So there are things to think about with college planning and you may have more than one child. You may have a neurotypical child or a child without a intellectual developmental disability that has some other challenges but you can still plan. You should still be planning for their education as well. We'll touch on that. Some tax considerations this time of year. I may move this one up a little earlier. Taxes have been delayed for several months, so we don't have to file by April 15th this year. We pushed that back. However, some of us have filed. We might want to look into making an amendment or going forward some things to consider. Talking about, should you file for your child to get a tax return? How much income do you need to file a tax return? Does it make sense to claim your child as a dependent? Things of that nature we'll be talking about. Estate planning, I think most of us have probably heard of a special needs trust. Perhaps we've heard of a pooled trust. Perhaps we've heard of maybe we don't need a special needs trust, or what does it mean? How does it work? We'll touch on this. We'll do a little deeper dive into, I am not an attorney. I will give some resources about where you can find attorneys for your state, and we'll do a deeper dive into some things to be asking the attorney when you're working with them. Many attorneys are still working even though they can't see you in person. They'll do Zoom calls and things of that nature. So the current shelter in place for those states that have it, this is not a reason for you to not do your estate planning. And finally, we'll talk about able accounts. I'm referencing Maryland 529. I am based in Maryland. However, I work with people all over the country. Not every state has an able account. Most do. Some states, like Florida, you have to be a resident to use. But we'll talk about the advantages of an able account, how you can use an able account with a special needs trust, who should have an able account, when you should set it up, and concerns, any possible concerns or worries. So those are the things we're going to be touching on over the next couple weeks. And as we move forward, we will touch on those and many more things. So I'm looking forward to talking to you all in a not too distant future. Stay tuned and email us if you have any questions at either eric@planningacrossthespectrum.com or andrew@planningacrossthespectrum.com, or leave us a message on our Facebook page. Take care.